Hello everyone. I welcome all of you to my second session on working with functions. Yes, what is that I have discussed in the previous session, that is session number 1, working with functions. Please recollect whatever the topics that I have discussed in working with functions session 1. I have discussed the anatomy of functions. I have taught you what is the syntax to write the functions, how exactly the functions looks like. Okay, so that is the last topic that I have done in detail in the session number 1. So I welcome all of you to the next topics whatever I have in the session 2 with respect to working with functions. So what is that I will discuss in this session? So it's very important to understand the positional arguments. Do I have only one argument? In the last session I have discussed different types of arguments. So that is the positional arguments, default arguments and keyword arguments. This is very important. So if you want to deal with functions, you should know how many different types of arguments that we have. So let me discuss in detail with respect to positional argument, default arguments and also keyword arguments. Along with that, I will also discuss how you can pass multiple arguments in your functions. That is also I will discuss in this session. So you will get a fair idea how exactly that I can return a value in functions. What are the different ways that I have to return a value from the function is what I will discuss in this session. So along with that, I will also discuss what is composition, scope of variables. You would have already come across with this topic, but I'll give you a small glimpse about scope of variables, and also I will discuss name resolution and mutable and immutable concepts. So this is the overview that I am going to discuss in this session. Please concentrate. Let me start with the first one. So as I told you, I will be starting the session with these first concept. So that is positional arguments, and also I will discuss default keyword. So what is this exactly, sir? Let us understand in detail. Yes, let us imagine we have a function. Please imagine we have a function. What should be the name of the function? Yes, let's assume we have a function. So if I want to write any function, please remember I have to use a keyword called def. Yes, let's imagine I have a function called check. Okay, so inside this I have 3 parameters. Let's assume a comma b comma c. Okay, so then after that I have colon. So let me just not write anything inside this. Okay, let me just write return a plus b plus c. So let's assume like this. Let us understand the concept of positional arguments right now. So fine. So guys, what is the name of the function here? My function name is check. What is the function name? My function name is check. Okay, so here I have 3 arguments. Here I have 3 arguments, x, y, z. So please observe, if I write x, so you should treat it as a variables. You should treat it as a variables. How many variables I have? I have 3 variables. How many variables I have? 3 variables. For example, if I write a, b, c, you should treat this a, b, c as a variable. You should treat this as a variable. Suppose if I write something like this 10, 20, 30, you should treat this as a literals. You should treat this as a literals. Please understand how many variables I have? I have 3 variables. So that I will call it as a x and y and z. So please understand x, y, z I have. If I use this as my function call, whatever the value that I have in this x will be passed to a. X will be passed to a, and whatever the value that I have with y will be passed to b, and whatever the value that I have with z, I will be passing it to c. So this is what I will call it as a positional arguments. The value will be passed based on the positions. The value will be passed based on the positions. That is what you need to understand. This is the first type of arguments that we have. That is what we call it as a positional arguments. What is that you need to understand with this example? You can pass the variables. Let's take a second scenario. So in this scenario, how many variables I have and how many literal I have? Please understand. I have one literal, that is 2. I have one literal, that is 2. And I have two variables. That is what I have given here. So literal plus variables. Literal plus variables. Please understand, I have one literal and I have two variables in the second example. So let us understand. Yes, it's ready for me now. Okay, so this 2 is getting assigned to A, and this X is getting assigned to B, and this Y is getting assigned to C. So this is how my positional arguments is working. So please make a note and please try to understand how exactly your positional arguments is working. Please make a note of it, dear students. So the same thing that I have in the third example, I don't have any variables. Instead of variables, I have just taken the literal. So this is a value, this is a value, this is a B value, and this is a C value. Please make a note of it. So that is default arguments. This is very important type of arguments that you should understand. What is that I have to understand with respect to this default arguments? Please observe. There is a difference in the function header. There is a difference in the function header. What is that I have to observe, sir? Please observe this part of the function header. So this is what I will call it as a function header. Okay. Please observe this part of the function header. What is that I have given? I have taken three parameters. The first parameter is principal, the second parameter is time, and the third parameter is rate. So what is that I have done for this rate? Please observe here, rate is equal to 0.10. I have given rate is equal to 0.10. So what is that you have given? I have given, or I have assigned the value for this rate already. I have assigned the value for this rate already. You don't have to pass whenever you are passing, or whenever during the function call, you just have to pass two value for this principal and time you have to pass. You don't have to pass for this rate. Point number 1. Even if you don't pass the value for this rate, you can call this function without any error. Point number 1, that is what you need to remember. So my dear students, even if you don't pass the value for this rate, you will be able to execute, or you will be able to call this function. So that is the first point that you should remember. Second point, suppose if I pass 3 value during the function call, sir, please write the function call, how exactly it looks. I just wanted to see. Yes, I'm just writing it for you. So what is the function name? I have interest as a function name. Okay. So here I'm just passing 10, 20, 30. So what will be the value for principal? It is 10. What will be value for time? So it is 20. What is the value for rate? It should be 30. Even if I don't write this 30 also, it will execute. Suppose if I write 30, so what will happen? The rate value will be 30. The rate value will be 30. That is what you need to understand. Even if you pass, there will be no error. Whatever the value that you are passing, that will get assigned to rate. So why do we have this default? Suppose if in case if you forget to pass the value, automatically the default value, whatever you have passed, it will be considered for the rate parameter. That is the speciality of default arguments. That is the speciality of default arguments. One more important point that you should never forget about this default parameters or default arguments. So what is that point, sir? So let me just explain it to you in detail. So which is the default argument you have? So this is the default argument you have. So can I write something like this, sir? Yes, I will just show you. So DEF interest rate 0.10 comma, I'll just write it in a short words, P and T. Can I write something like this? Can I write something like this? No, you cannot. Sir, why? Because you should have your default arguments. So in your right side part, so to your left side part of your arguments, you should not have any default arguments. For example, can I write, is this a valid statement? Is this a legal statement? No, it is not. It is not. I will show you one more example. So def interest. Can I write something like this? This is T. Please understand. Okay, can I write something like this? No. Why? Because my dear students, again I have default arguments here. So after the default arguments I have normal arguments. Can I have like that? No. According to the rules of default arguments, you are not supposed to have something like this. So again, this is a illegal statement. Again, this is a illegal statement. Let's take one more scenario. So I have DEF interest. Okay, so I have P and I have T, I have rate is equal to 0.1. Let's imagine I have one more default argument. Okay, I'll just take it as A is equal to 10. Can I have something like this? Yes, you can have this. This is a valid statement. Okay, why? Because you're having the default arguments after the default arguments, not before. So that is the important rule with respect to the default argument that you should understand with respect to the default arguments. So we have understood the positional arguments, we have understood the default arguments. The important one more we have, that is keyword arguments. What is that we have? Keyword arguments. Why do we have this keyword argument? What are the reasons that we have keyword arguments? Please understand. Let's go back to the default arguments. Okay, so whenever you are passing the value, okay, let's take this scenario. Okay, let's consider this. Okay, whenever, let me just erase it for all of you. Okay, so let's consider this. Whenever I'm passing the value, okay, so I have to have my function called something like this, interest 10, 20. Okay, what will happen? So it will call this function, the 10 will be passed to the principal, 20 will be passed to the time. So the default value of rate will be as it is. Yes, fine. So now I want to pass the value for this also. So what is that I will do? So interest 10, 20, 20.1. Okay, what will happen? 10 is for principal, 20 is for time. So 20.1 will be for rate. So please understand, I cannot shuffle the values. I cannot shuffle the values. I cannot change the positions. This is the restriction that I have. I cannot have something like this. Like say for example, 20.1, 10, 20. I cannot have something like this. It will be an error for me. So guys, how do I solve this problem? So to solve this problem, I have something called keyword arguments. I have something called keyword arguments. You just have to define the keywords and you don't have to maintain that particular position. You don't have to maintain that particular position. You can change the position in the arguments. Even though if you change the position, but the value will be assigned only for that particular argument. That is what you should remember. You can ask me, sir, whenever you are explaining in the previous example, I can pass the 3 values, right? Yes, there is no mistake in that. The 3 arguments I can pass, but please understand the positions. Please understand the positions. I want the position also to be matched. But in the previous example, the position will not match. Of course, you will pass the value. There is no mistake in that. But the position is not matching. That is what you need to understand. I know you will get a doubt there. But please understand, please remember, the position will not match. Even if I shuffle the positions, but the keyword will be same. Please look at this example. So what is that I'm trying to do here? I'm taking a keyword. So what is this? What is my keyword? My keyword is print. Okay, my keyword is print. Instead of principal, I'm just taking like this. So print is equal to 2000 I'm taking. For this keyword, I'm assigning the value 2000. So for time, I am assigning the value 2. So for rate, I'm assigning the value 0.10. So please observe the second example. Am I maintaining the same order? Am I maintaining the same position? No, I'm not. So this is the advantage that I have in the keyword arguments. This is the advantage that I have in the keyword arguments. But my question to all of you is, even though I change the arguments, I change the position, is the value changing for it? No. So T remains for 2 and Prince remains for 2000 and rate remains for 0.10. That is what you need to observe, and that is the advantage of keyword arguments. That is the advantage of keyword arguments. Please remember, we have 3 types of arguments. One is positional arguments, another one is default arguments, last one is keyword arguments. I will be using the keyword arguments to change the position, but the value remains same. Okay, so I use the default arguments to pass the default values. Even if I don't pass the value for that, so automatically the value will be considered. But remember the important point with respect to the default arguments, the left side, for example, if this is a default arguments, the left side whatever I am taking, okay, so it should have the normal arguments. It should have the normal arguments, and towards it, so it should have the default arguments. Suppose if it is having the normal arguments in this side, so it is a violation of rules with respect to the default arguments is what you should remember. So I have given you the brief knowledge with respect to the different types of arguments we have. So moving on to the next important topic, return types. Of course, I have the function. Function is to perform some task. Once the task is performed, I have to return the value. I have to return the result. How do I retrieve, or how do I send the result? So my dear students, I will be sending the result in this form. So what is that you're saying in this form? Please observe. So I can send the results in 3 forms. What is that? Just now I have explained. So if you just look at this 5, what do you treat this 5 as? Yes, exactly. So this 5 you should treat it as literal. This 5 you should treat it as literal. So what is the first point then? You can pass, or you can return the value, or you can return the result as literal. You can return the result as literal. That is the first thing that you should understand. What is the second one that you have? Please observe this. Can I call these 3 things as expression? These 3 things as expression. Can I call this as expression? Yes, I can call this as expression. I can return my result of that function in the form of expressions. What is the second point? I can return my result in the form of expression. If you ask me, sir, is it valid if I use the expressions in the written statements? Yes, you can use the expressions in the written statements. What is the third one that I have? Please observe. So what do I call this as? I call this as variable. I return my value in the form of variable also. So in 3 ways I will return my result from the function. The first one is I will return in the form of literal, that is the values. I will return in the form of variables, and also I will return the values. I will return the result in the form of expressions. This is the 3 different ways that I have to return my result out of the function. So moving on to the next concept, composition. So I will just take an example for composition. If I have a big statement, if I have a big expression, in that statement, in that expression, if I have a small expression, that is what I will call it as a composition. That is what I will call it as a composition. I have a big building. Inside that big building, if I have one room, that room I will call it as a composition. So what is that I will have inside the function call? Please understand, I have a function call already. Inside that function call, what I will have? I can have the arithmetic expressions. I can have the arithmetic expression, and also I can have the logical expression. Please understand, I can also have the function call. I can also have the function call, which will go for a loop, function call inside the function call. Please understand that. So what is the next topic that I have? Scope of the variables. It's very, very important topic. Please listen to me carefully. What is the scope of this variable? Scope of the variable. Before discussing this topic, let me take an example to all of you. Imagine I have some related stuff like gadgets in my house. I have, okay. So can I access that? Yes, I can access that. Imagine the people, those who are walking in the street, can they come and access? No, because it's private. It is only limited to me. Only I can access, and it is visible only to me, right? Why? Because they are not allowed inside my room. That's the reason they cannot access my things. Suppose if I have some bus stop, so can I access, can I use that? Yes, I can use that. Can everybody use that? Yes, everybody use that. Why? The scope of the bus stand is for everybody. It is for global. Everybody can access. But the iPad, what you have inside your room, that is not available for everybody. It is available only for you. So that is what you need to understand. So whatever I have inside my room, that I will call it as a local. So whatever I have outside my house, that I will call it as a global. So please understand the concept of scope of variables. We have two types of variables. One is global variable, another one is local variable. Let us understand this example very clearly. So local environment, in the sense, imagine I have this function. Inside this function, I have these two variables. So within that, I can access. So this is inside this function, whatever I have declared. So I can access only within this function. So this is what I will call it as a local. So this is what I will call it as a global. So my dear students, in this global, I can have n number of functions. N number of functions can access the variables which I have in the global environment. So this global environment is nothing but my program. If you declare any variable outside all the functions, that is in the global variable, global environment, so all the functions of that particular program can access. But whatever the variable that you have declared inside the function, only you can access within that function, not outside the function. So that is what you need to understand, dear students. So here, a very, very interesting topic that I would like to discuss right now to all of you. So what is that, sir? In all other programming language, suppose if you write a is equal to 10, so you are storing this value inside this variable a. You are storing this value inside this a. So a has got a memory location. So in that, you are trying to store the value 10. But in Python, it is not like that. All the numbers are already predefined. You are just giving the reference of that variable to that particular number. So what is that? You are trying to explain. You are not understanding. Please listen here. Let me just take an example. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So like that you have the numbers. So I have a. I want to store 2 in this a. So what is that I will do in Python? What exactly it happens? So a stores the reference of 2. It does not stores the value exactly. What does it stores? A stores the reference, not the value. For example, I have b. In this b also, I want to store the value 2. What is that I will do? So dear students, I will store the same reference of 2 in b also. I don't store the value exactly. I will just store the reference. That is what you need to understand. In the textbook, there is a environment, program environment. Please go back to that and check how exactly the reference of the variables are given in each and every program step by step. Please observe that. Please go back to that. So this is the main important thing that you should understand. I am not going to store the value. Instead of that, I will store the reference of that value. Sir, then I do the same thing for strings. Then I do the same thing for other data types. No, my dear students, only for this integer. Only for this integer, you will do like this. For other data types, you will store the values, whatever you have. That is what you need to understand. So moving on to the next one, I have naming resolutions. What is this naming resolution problems? What is the naming resolution problem that I will come across is what I am trying to explain. For example, this is the local namespace. I have called some of the variables here. So I will try to find in this function, okay, function in the sense it is a local namespace. So I will not find it. So what I will do, I will go to the next upper namespace. What is that I will call? I will call it as a enclosing namespace. Even in that enclosing namespace, I will try to find that particular variable. Suppose if I don't find it, I will go to the next upper namespace. What is that namespace? Global namespace. Even I will try to check. If I don't get it, I will go to the next upper namespace, that is built-in namespace. That is built-in namespace. Sir, what is that you are trying to explain? I have a variable. I am trying to search for that variable. So where exactly I have defined, I don't know. So if I get it inside this local space, then I will stop my searching. Suppose if I don't get it, I will try to search in this one. Even if I don't get my variable here, I will go to the next upper state. Next upper state. This is how I will start searching for the variable in a different namespace when I don't get it. So that is what you need to understand in this point of time. So you all know about mutable and immutable concepts, which we have already discussed. Mutable in the sense, dear students, you can change the value. Immutable in the sense, you cannot change the value. Hope I have tried my best to give almost all the concepts, whatever you have with respect to the functions. Now, if you have listened to my class very clearly, so you will be able to write your own functions. Please understand, so your function should be in the top of the program. So first only the function header will be executed, then after that top level statements will be executed. So if you want to define any function, please remember, imagine, so you have to use the def keyword followed by the name of the function. Whenever you want to write the name of the function, please remember you have to follow the rules of identifiers. Then after that you will use the parenthesis. So inside that parenthesis you will write the parameters. Please remember there is a difference between the parameters and arguments. Then after the number of parameters that you have mentioned, then you will come to the body of the functions. Inside that body of the function, whatever you want to write, I mean to say, whatever the code, whatever the statement that you wish to write, you will make it as a body of the function by indenting, by giving one tab space. That I will call it as the body of the function. Then after that, the next set of statements will be not indented, So all those statements does not belong to this function. All the functions will have the return statements. You can return the values in three different types. Like, you can pass the variable, you can pass the literal, you can also pass the expressions. Please remember, you have three types of arguments. Number one, positional arguments. Positional arguments in the sense, the value whatever you have in the first argument will be passed to the first parameter. So like that, the position will be maintained. The second one, default argument. Default arguments in the sense, already the value you have declared. Suppose even if you don't pass that value, automatically the default value will be considered, and make sure the default values or the default arguments, default parameters will come in the right side corner. The right side corner of the function. In front of the default arguments, you will not have any other arguments, is what you should remember. The last one you have is keyword arguments. By using the keyword arguments, you can change the position of the arguments, but the value will remain the same, is what I would like to tell you. So with this, I have discussed the scope of the variable. You have two types of variables. One is local variable and global variable. And also we have discussed the composition. And the last topic that we have discussed is name resolution. So first you will search in the local namespace, and then you will go for the enclosing namespace. Even if you don't get here, you will go to the global, and then you will go to the built-in namespace. By this, I complete the concept of working with function. You are eligible to write your own functions, dear students. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.